Hey, how are you? How's it going? So, just a really quick one. I was getting a few questions the other day in relation to stress and hair loss, and I thought I would just come on and just give you a little bit of an overview, a real quick overview, because I know I touched on it in my lesson the other day on hormones and hair loss, but I wanted to give you a little insight into why stress can cause hair loss. Now, what normally happens with stress is it causes hair loss afterwards. So it can cause hair loss, 6 weeks to 2 months, even 3 months in some cases. Hair will fall out and it will be kind of diffuse all over, and you might even notice clumps coming out. Now, two things are actually going on. And if people have long-term hair loss due to stress, that can be a little bit of an insight, and actually an insight into heart health, and maybe there's some blood pressure issues. Maybe this needs to be looked into. But what generally happens when we are stressed, we normally get high adrenaline and high cortisol. So this is particularly for high cortisol stress. So if you're acutely stressed, you've had trauma, you've had injury, you've had a death in the family, you've had something extremely stressful go on, or even just day-to-day life, if that's extremely stressful and you're not managing that stress, what happens is that puts the stress hormone cortisol up. And what cortisol does, as cortisol rises and rises, it also rises a hormone called aldosterone. Aldosterone is regulated in the kidneys, and what aldosterone does is it causes sodium retention. So with stress, you get high cortisol, you get high aldosterone, which means you get salt retention, you get low magnesium, you get low potassium, you get bloating, you get fluid retention, and you get extreme thirst that can't be satisfied. Now, what then happens, one thing that happens with this is the sodium pools in the hair follicle. And what this does is this stops the nutrients getting to the hair follicle. So then the growth phase, the anagen phase, is disrupted. And then eventually the hair goes into the telogen phase and you lose it. You have a diffuse loss, and it can happen quite quickly. Sometimes it can't be noticed, or sometimes you might have thin hair for months and months and months at the time if you're going through chronic stress. If it's an acute stress, you might have that hair loss and then it will grow back just fine. But also another thing that's happening is the aldosterone, which is regulated in the kidneys. And this is interesting. This is why TCM, medications and acupuncture, one remedy that they have for balding is to actually nourish the kidneys. And this is because high cortisol will cause more aldosterone. This will raise your blood pressure, which will put pressure on your kidneys. With high blood pressure, you might get fatigued, and also what you'll get is you might get damage to the arteries, and the peripheral smaller blood vessels will constrict. So you'll get less blood supply to the scalp, which is less nutrition to the scalp, which causes less hair growth and slower hair growth, and then the die off of hair. So there's two mechanisms of action with stress there. We've got one, stress over a long period of time causes high blood pressure. That stops the blood supply to the hair, which then stops the nutrients and which stops the growth. Next is high cortisol. So what you want to do if you're going through stress, so if you're a very stressed person or you're going through acute stress, what you want to do is you want to increase your magnesium and your potassium. You can get your potassium in lots of green juices, using things like barley grass, using things like celery, using cos lettuce, cucumber, making yourself up lots and lots of green juices. Apple cider vinegar is high in potassium, so if you're going through a stress phase, you can have about 10 mils of apple cider vinegar in water. And also what you want to do is you want to increase your magnesium. You can get magnesium naturally in barley grass, but I would recommend taking a magnesium aminochelate form of a supplement and taking about 500 milligrams twice a day. This will actually help to restore your sodium balance, bring your sodium balance down, and along with drinking fluid, it will actually support your kidneys and support you during these acute stressful times, and hopefully prevent that hair loss down the track. So those are the two ways in which stress can cause hair loss, and what you can do to support that with potassium, and also taking magnesium that will support that high cortisol, high aldosterone and high sodium. So I hope that was helpful, but that's how stress impacts your hair growth and hair loss. See you.